Hi everyone, my name is Lyndsie Askea. I'm the author of The Captain's Captive on Serealities.com, and they've asked me to answer a couple of interview questions. Now, I have the questions actually in front of me. I don't have anyone specifically interviewing me, but talking to myself is not really unusual behavior, so I think it should go okay. The first question that they ask is, where do you find inspiration for your story ideas? I think what happens for me is that I will see something or I'll hear something or someone will tell me something and I'll think to myself, okay, what would happen if this ended really differently than it actually did? And it kind of gets my imagination going and excites me to think about, how different of a world it could be for the characters. So that's where most of my stories come from. And then the second question that they ask is sort of similar to me and how I answer it. How do you go about creating and developing characters? Do you have a specific approach or method? I don't know about an approach or method, but in terms of coming up with characters, it sometimes is a bit of a combination of personalities or an exaggerated version of a personality that I come across, whether it's someone that I know, an acquaintance, which is usually safer because they don't see themselves in the character. But you just kind of exaggerate people that you've seen and personalities. And then in terms of developing the character, you think about, what would this character do? What would this character be? Because every character wouldn't do what Lindsie would do. And those are the most fun parts to write because I have to not imagine what someone just like Lyndsie Askea would do. I have to think about, what would this criminal mastermind do? Or, what would this person who's so very, very opposite from me do in a certain scenario. So I have to think about motivation, I think, more than anything. The next question is, what is your biggest challenge as a writer? I think that the biggest challenge for me, and I've heard it a lot with other writers, is just discipline. Making yourself sit down and write. When I read advice for aspiring writers, that's the number one thing is they say, just do it. Just start writing and get yourself inspired. That you can research and you can do all these great things, but if you aren't writing, it doesn't matter. So I think the discipline aspect is the most difficult for me. Kind of along those lines, if I do sit down to write, I just think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun. This is so enjoyable. It must not be productive. And of course it is, but something so fun can't be good for you. And so I find something that I feel is, maybe more productive to do and go about that process. The next question is, what do you love most about writing? Well, I was talking to my husband the other day and I said, this is just so much fun because I've created this whole world that doesn't really exist. Of course, it's, on this planet, but it's not an environment that actually exists that I know of. And I get to decide what these characters do. And it kind of gives you this feeling of power. I said to my sister, I might do these horrible things to this character. She's like, why would you do bad things to a character? But you have this kind of power trip going on with your characters, and it's your world, and you get to do with it what you want. Then they ask, which authors and books have inspired your own writing the most? Well, I think that while there are so many different authors that I admire, I really love the work of a Christian author by the name of Gilbert Morris. He is a specialist in historical fiction, and I just remember wishing as a kid, oh my gosh, I wish that I could, take people to different places the way that he does and make you feel like you're a part of the story and you're invested in what happens to the characters. And I wanted to emulate that from a very young age. So he would be probably the one who stands out the most. And kind of along the same lines, they asked, do you have an all-time favorite literary character? I don't think I have a favorite literary character as much as I have a couple of favorite types of characters. I find myself drawn to the type of character who is in this very stable, steady environment and then they find themselves thrown into a situation that is very out of their norm, and they have to rise above it, and they become this totally different person than they ever imagined themselves being. On the other hand, I also really love the type of character who, from the beginning of the story to the very end of the story, is the same person. They've learned no lessons. They are essentially an anti-hero, but I find it amusing because don't we all know somebody like that just doesn't ever learn the lesson? So I enjoy those types of characters. The next question is, what is your favorite aspect of writing for Serealities.com? Well, it's so enjoyable to me to be challenged in my writing because being challenged makes you better. And so I have this idea of what's going to happen in the next episode. I just know this is what I'm going to do. But of course, the readers vote on what happens next. So I have to kind of reroute. And so I think they'll vote on, this happening. And then they don't. So I have to think about, okay, well, how is Aubrey going to act now? So I really enjoy just that challenge and getting readers involved in what I'm doing. And the last question is, what do you see yourself writing next? Well, for the last couple of years, I've kind of had a love story bouncing around in my head. And again, haven't had the discipline to actually sit down and write it. So I have actually started writing a novel, which, who knows, maybe in the next year or two, I can get that written and you all can enjoy a long form version that is entirely my own. So that is all the questions. I would like to take the opportunity to encourage you, go out there, read The Captain's Captive each week. It's released on Fridays. And while you're out there, check out my fellow authors. They are extremely talented ladies. And I think you really will enjoy the process of following their characters and getting to decide what happens. And every week that you vote, you get entered into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. So not only do you get to enjoy yourself, but you also could potentially win some Amazon cash. And who doesn't spend all their money on Amazon? So I appreciate you taking the last 7 minutes and 21 seconds of listening to me yammer on. Enjoy yourselves, and I look forward to getting out the next episode to you.